My name is Thomas Kvorning. I work for a Nordic mid-market private equity fund called Altor Equity Partners. We are a 2 billion euro fund, and we invest in companies with typically 100 or 200 million euro revenue, could be up to 300 or 400. We're fairly agnostic when it comes to which industries we invest in, but the important thing is that there is good value creation potential and that it's Nordic anchored. So we have a relationship with the management team and the banks and can build on our network here in the Nordics. My own background is I have a master's in finance, and I have worked in investment banking before joining private equity in 2007. So I worked from 2004 to 2007 in Morgan Stanley in London and New York doing M&A for the telecommunications and media industry. But I have also worked with pharma and medtech. I also sit on the board of a animal feed company. So quite a broad range of industries and exposures, but the common denominator for us is mid-sized companies with huge value creation potential and Nordic anchored. That being said, I think nearly all of our companies are global in the sense that they export. They would have significant markets outside Denmark. They would typically also have multiple sites, multiple production sites. So in relation to our topic for today, the IT setup would also be global by nature and have a certain amount of complexity, and the organizational complexity is also quite substantial. I'd say generally IT is an important part of the company. Of course, it varies quite a lot whether it really can move the needle in terms of valuation. If a company has a very strong IT setup, they would typically have a strong backbone in general, a strong control over their financials, strong visibility, good CRM systems, good grip on customers, etc. So I think that it correlates with a lot of different topics, so it's difficult to isolate. I would say in general what we try to do is to quantify what the IT agenda will cost us when we look into an acquisition and the value creation agenda. I would say in general what we try to do is to quantify what the IT agenda will cost us when we look into an acquisition and the value creation agenda. And then we build that into our base case model. So you say mathematically or economically we've captured the cost side of it. If it's a larger IT agenda or digital transformation, it wouldn't be a cost component only. It would also drive some top line, and that would be baked into the commercial analysis and therefore also the return on that, which again feeds into the valuation. But again, I think it varies a lot, but we would try to bake it all into an overall judgment as to does this company have the right setup? Are they underinvested? What will it take to upgrade the IT or digital capabilities in order to deliver on our plan? That being said, we as a general rule of thumb, I think we typically underestimate the cost of transforming IT or upgrading IT capabilities, and we probably typically also underestimate the time it takes to implement IT-heavy agendas. That's my impression from the companies I've worked with, so a handful of cases. I think this is probably an area where we traditionally have been maybe underinvesting a little bit in terms of really mapping out what are the digital opportunities for this company, But given, you could say, in the time period we're in now, where you really have accelerating trends, accelerating disruptive trends, etc. So we are, I think, increasingly paying more attention to really trying to put a number on also the upsides, and really give it some attention. So you say one way of really giving it more attention is to hire specialized advisors, as opposed to maybe our more traditional approach is to get consultants who can sort of assess the backbone and the boring part of IT, if you will. I've seen cases where we dedicate more specialized advisors, and simply dedicate more attention to really taking a view on whether and how soon we can expect to what it will take to basically succeed in a digital, you could say, transformation, basically, or value creation work stream. We typically, historically, I would say, we have baked the IT due diligence into the same consultants who into the scope for the financial due diligence. So Deloitte or PwC or one of the big four, they would have people who are used to looking at, say, infrastructure or backbone related IT. So they would go in and basically assess how up to date are their systems, how good are their capabilities, reporting capabilities, ERP, CRM, some of the core systems, if you will. And we would get a list of to-dos or recommendations from them. When it comes to the more growth-oriented side of it, customer-facing side of it, or the digital side of IT, as I mentioned before, this would typically be part of the commercial due diligence, which McKinsey or BCG or someone like that would include in their scope. We have, in a couple of cases recently, also hired specialist advisors who are strong on the digital side, or strong on search optimization, or strong on various components. So on the digital side, it's more. It's evolving a bit more, I feel, at the moment, who's the better in each case. It would always be an important component, whether it's transformational or not. I would say in maybe 1 or 2 out of the 6 cases or 6 companies I work with, IT has been transformational, so it's been a really big component of more as an enabling factor, I would say. One specific example, in an industrial company, we are putting in, for the first time, a group-wide ERP system which didn't exist. We're putting in a proper CRM system. It didn't exist before. We're putting in business intelligence, consolidation systems, PDM, drawing a database integrated with the rest of the firm, etc. So we're doing a full upgrade on basically all areas for this production company. A lot of this is, you could say, core systems, but it's also customer facing and upgrading transparency, financial transparency, and transparency towards, or you could say, in order to manage our KPIs and really follow up on performance, etc., we've really been missing some systems to capture that, and for management to be able to navigate the business. So this has been it's one of the more immature companies in terms of IT setup, where we had to invest quite a lot, and maybe also readjust our expectations a bit on how many resources or how much this takes up in terms of resources and time. But I think it will be a very worthwhile investment. Absolutely. I think one of the key things when we do our investment decision is of course to look at market trends, and this includes of course also the longer term or near term disruptive forces in the industry. And I think in many cases you're not standing right in front of a disruption, or otherwise, or if it's very evident, they would have a hard time selling the company. But I think there's always an element of disruption, and we have a couple of cases where we're halfway into the investment and things have really sort of accelerated. It's a very we're clear market leaders, and it's a stable business. But it could be there is a scenario where it could be things could be changing over the next couple of years. So we have, in two of these cases, actually, we've launched or you could say we've accelerated a digital project, which is more in the what I would call Industry 4.0, category, where we try to basically improve our value proposition towards the customer by adding sensors and digital displays and really being able to monitor and have a much more efficient production with fewer blue collars and much more control, less yield loss, etc. throughout the production process. We haven't gotten there yet, but I think we realized that this could be turned to our advantage actually, because we can use, you could say, digital tools here. If we really invest in it, we can get ahead of our key competitors. Well, I'm not an expert on buzzwords, but what I interpret when I see that word is basically how to utilize technology and sensors, and how to basically integrate the internet with the machinery on the shop floor and create intelligent digital solutions so that you can say if it's a process flow, you can optimize your product or your energy efficiency or your scrap rates, etc. So really becomes very tangible. If it's another type of company, it will be other metrics you measure up against. You will of course not only need a good sensors and integrate with a control system, but you would also need manufacturing system capturing all this data in the first place, and you would also need an ERP at the bottom of that. So I think in some of these cases it requires more investment than you think, but I think if you have these building blocks, the good building blocks, then I think there's huge benefits especially if you're an industry leader and you invest in it, because it requires quite a lot of work, I think, in order to really add value to your customer. Otherwise they would have done it already, or just found a way of operating their shop floor or their operations more efficiently on their own. But you really need to capture the right data points and integrate machines or production flows with control tower, if you will. Well, as I mentioned before, I think there's been a couple of cases where it's been, you say, backbone or infrastructure heavy. So this would be, significant ERP upgrade, maybe 2 or 3 versions. And also we own a lot of B2B, manufacturing companies where MES systems has been key to getting the full benefits out of the data that we gather during our operations or in our operations. So MES systems, ERP systems, CRM would also be an area where we typically see a lot of investments, business intelligence, and increasingly big data also, which is, I guess, also part of the business intelligence equation. But then, of course, the interesting upsides with sort of new technologies coming online with sensors or other sort of more sophisticated big data opportunities that you can use in marketing or for targeting your consumer or your customer. you could say once the backbone is in place, so you have core systems, you can capture data. At least from what we can see, typically when we come in, companies have generally not extracted all the value out of the data they have, and that might require an investment, but which we're absolutely happy to make. But I think that's a general tendency we see that in terms of getting the full benefit out of the business intelligence, the intelligence that's inherent in the operations and the sales, the go-to-market efforts, etc. That is not being exploited today. Now, I think the really interesting thing, as we've spoken about before, is whether you can take those benefits to the next level and really start not only analyzing, product efficiency data, but also really start delivering a better product or better service to your customer, and really start drastically improving your value proposition through digital tools. I think equity funds are quite good at taking a step back and reflecting on, investment cycles, cyclicality, long-term trends, etc. In general, I would say, when it comes to really capitalizing on digital opportunities, I think we've been medium at that. I think some of this will require that you in some cases take a bit longer investment horizon, because if you come in and you expect to exit within 5 years, some of these projects will take a few years to prepare and upgrade your systems, a few years to diagnose what is actually needed and how to really tailor this towards your customer. So I think that's probably one trend I can see coming. And also, once you start really reaping benefits from an intelligent investment into a digital project, you might want to stick on or hold on to the company for a few years more. That's at least one element I see changing perhaps.